way better role. Way like love it. I'm like
Ready?
okay.
This is Haley.
And this is Bailey. You're listening to Unleashed.
Hey, Bailey.
Hey.
Okay, so I was just reading some really fun facts and statistics. Did you know that there's 4 different types of personal growth?
I didn't know that. I feel like I'm always talking about how it's such a good thing to be growing and working on yourself always, but I didn't know there were 4 different types.
Right, yeah. It says social accomplishment, psychological growth, spiritual progress, and transformation.
That's awesome. I love that there's so many different ones that you can focus on or work on because I feel like it's so much fun working on yourself, but a lot of times you don't know where to start. And I think that can be such a great way to even look into different ways you can improve yourself and become a better version of yourself.
I think it's really cool that when it comes to like personal growth and just like growing as a person, like I said, there's 4 different aspects of it. I never knew that, but it's not always an easy thing to do. But when I actually get really excited about it though. Like though it's not easy, I really like the idea of like becoming a better person, and I'm always trying to figure out what can make me a better person. At least I think I am now. I didn't always feel that way though. I mean, have you always like been that way?
I don't think I've always been that way. I think it's been something as I've gotten older, I've realized how much I love working on myself and how much I love becoming a better version of myself. And it's funny because yesterday we were talking about this just randomly, actually. And I was like, one of my favorite things in our friendship is that you're always working on yourself because I think that's something that's so important in my life that being able to have a friend that is also always trying to push to be a better version of themselves is really helpful for me and in our friendship because we're always trying to grow, and I think that's so important, and not everybody's like that, and that's okay, but that's something that's really important for me.
No, I think it's really cool, and that was something that really stood out to me in from the very beginning about you, is that you're always looking at how can you do something better, or what can you always do to push yourself to become the best version of yourself, whether that's through working or through social or just yourself. I think it's really cool, and I noticed that like you have a lot of drive and like umph to really like get you going, pursue the things you like, and you manifest a lot. I've noticed that. I noticed that actually at Disneyland yesterday, and I caught myself like, I was like, I need to do that more.
In what ways do I manifest? I guess that's, like, a good question, and maybe something, if you're not manifesting or, it's just a fun idea to talk about or fun thing, not idea, fun thing to talk about because I don't think I always notice it either because maybe it's just part of what I do.
Yeah, I think it's maybe you're really used to it, but like we were on Buzz Lightyear, and you're like, I'm going to win. But like you weren't cocky about it or like full of yourself. Like you were like, are you good at this game? You're like, yeah. And I was like, are you hustling me right now? I got vibes that you were like really good at this game. And you're like, yeah, I'm good. I was like, there we go. And I was like, I'm going down. And I was like, oh crap. And I immediately was like, well, maybe I will win. And I was like, maybe. And I like put doubt in my head. And I was like, and I just felt that I was like, she's manifesting it. And I just got my head and my hand cramped when we were playing the game. And I was like, oh my gosh, that Buzz Lightyear like shooty game thing that you do is so hard. And so, but like you kicked my can. But I was like, she manifested that stuff. And that doesn't mean this because every time you manifest something doesn't mean it'll always happen or come true or whatever. But I really think it does help.
I think manifesting is so huge, and it's something that I always love to do. I guess I recognize that I was saying I don't know if I recognize it, but I feel like I know I do it. I just don't know if I always recognize it in every situation, I guess is how I was saying it earlier. But I feel like manifesting and being positive is something that I am really big on, and I love just looking at things and trying to be as positive as I can because when I'm not, I feel like it gets me down. And yeah, situations can be hard and there are hard moments, but for the big part of it or like most I'm trying to explain most for the majority is what I was looking for the majority of like day to day. I love being positive and looking at things with that outlook because I realize it just helps me be happy and it I think manifests it in a way without you realizing it. And I've noticed when I'm around people that aren't as positive, it brings you down and it doesn't, like it makes you not as motivated, not
It
as
really
happy.
does. And it affects you in ways that you don't even realize, because it's like when you're around that environment, you carry it with you, whether you're with those people or not. Like it's something that can resonate with you. So you said that you're a really positive person. I wanted to ask you, so with being a positive person though, I feel like that can come with a lot of hardships too, because when you do go through hard times and things that aren't necessarily positive, do you allow yourself to feel those moments and to understand that yeah, it could be worse, or something could be always be worse. But do you allow yourself to actually like go through those motions and let yourself feel that, or do you try to like cover it up?
I definitely feel like I didn't always let myself go through the emotions, or maybe I used to. I'm trying to think. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at going through, like, different emotions, but now I think I'm a little more. I recognize it, and it still takes me times. Like, there's moments I'll try and brush it off, and then, I'll talk to Evan or I'll talk to you, and I'm like, "Okay, I just need to feel that emotion and I'll feel better." And I think that's something I'm always working on because I don't like being down and I don't like talking, like, being sad about things. It's just not my personality, I feel like maybe. I don't know if that's a personality trait, but I just feel like that's something I'm try not to allow myself to do. But there are times that are hard, and I'm getting better at being. The more I recognize moments that are hard and the more I'm like, "Oh, this is hard," the quicker I end up getting over it. It's just like I've had anxiety before, and before I'd always be like, "I don't have anxiety. I don't have anxiety. Nope, I don't have anxiety." And then the second Evan and I had a discussion because I really started to learn I had anxiety, because I started therapy, and that was, like, right when Evan and I started dating, and then when I realized and I was able to say from, like, right when I'd feel it, I'd be like, "Oh, I have anxiety," to Evan, and right when I'd recognize it, I was able to actually, like, get over the anxiety quicker versus trying to hide it and push it down inside more. So, I guess, yes, I do recognize to your question, I guess, yes, I try and recognize it, but that's definitely something I'm still working on,
Yeah.
allowing myself to feel those
That's
emotions.
yeah, it's not always easy, especially when, like, I don't know, you're like, "Oh, yeah, well, it could be, I could always have it worse," or, "It's fine, it's not that big of a deal." And I feel like, I mean, I catch myself doing that, and I hear people doing it all the time, but it's like a almost like a type of dismissing our feelings by downplaying it, and I think it's not good when people do that because
That's a big pet peeve of mine is saying, like, it can always be worse because you're feeling that emotion.
yeah,
If it could be worse or it can't be worse,
yeah, it makes it well, it always,
it can
always,
always
always be worse,
be
like
worse. So
I mean, I
I
could literally go to
dismissing
worst
it,
case scenario every time I think of something, and it's just like, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario that could happen? And
yeah,
like, there's a balance with it. Like, I think it just depends on the situation, but allowing yourself to feel the negative emotions is super important because it allows you to be able to recognize that, man, there is, what can I do about it? Or allowing yourself to feel that, sitting with the uncomfortable, allowing yourself to know what it feels like to be happy too, and or maybe finding a way to work on something. I mean, you will always learn from the uncomfortable, and I think that when people don't allow themselves to do that, it prevents them from growing and learning as a person, and it also can create unhealthy habits later on in life because that can end up bottling up and then resurfacing in other areas of your life later, whether you realize it or not.
definitely. I think being able to deal with it is huge. I think being able to be in those emotions, but I think something that I really do and something I've been working a lot is recognizing it, but and letting myself have those emotions, but then when I'm done having those emotions is how can I improve myself from that? And
Yes.
that's something I'm really big on is like how can I grow and how can I change it? Okay, this isn't working or maybe it's a certain, situation of something not working or, that was hard or, there's so many different situations you can get down about if that makes sense. But it's once that situation is over, if there's something from there, can I improve how I handled the situation? Can I grow from what just happened? How can I change something that happened? Or, some things are in your control, some things aren't. But whatever the situation is, stepping back and growing from it. And yeah, that's not easy in the moment. And in the moment, you're having all these emotions. But when you're over those emotions and you're able to think a little bit better about it, then taking that and
Hmm.
learning from it.
I think that honestly, you sometimes you never actually get over something, and you can't, like you're saying, you can't always change a scenario, or something really drastic could happen, but there's two ways to look at it. You can allow it to let you can allow it to consume you
Mhm.
and affect your life every day, or you can allow yourself to feel it, work through it, and then whatever that time frame may be for healing or coping or working through it, whether if it's a loss of a job, a family member, or you stubbed your toe, whatever it may be, you can utilize that to help you grow as a person. And that's something I really think is important when it comes down to like people that you surround yourself with, because for a long time, like we were talking about this, like Bryce and I have always like, I mean, I wouldn't say always. We always are trying to make sure that we're trying to improve our relationship in ways we can,
Yes,
like,
I
yeah,
love that.
yes, like how can we be better and support each other? And for a long time, I think that I was falling short in that area. Like I wasn't supporting Bryce in the best ways, in the most ways I could.
But admitting that, And being able to admit that's huge. We'll talk about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
later.
yeah, and it's not easy admitting that, but I mean, it's a part of growing, and I think that it's a very important aspect of us because I mean, being in the last 3 years, I've really tried to do some perspective and grow as a person, but I've realized in a marriage and in a relationship, there's 2 of you, but it's hard because you guys like life becomes familiar. You get into a rhythm and a groove. I'm not just saying like a wake up, brush my teeth kind of rhythm and routine, but like you learn how each other's emotions are and reactions, and you know how to do how to comfort this person. But I think at the end of the day, things slowly do change over time, and having check-ins and making sure that you're still on the same page or and being honest and open and communicating, because like my goals from 3, 5, 6, 7 years ago are totally different than what they are today. And sometimes I don't always feel like in relationships you see that with couples checking in and making sure they're on the same page, or they just assume they do, and in reality they don't. And then you're saying like not that long ago that people can be full of resentment, whether not now but then later on, because they didn't communicate that.
I totally agree with you on that, and I think it's really interesting because something in Evan and I's relationship that we have done from the beginning is push each other and really learn each other and grow, and I love that about our relationship, and I think it's really unique because the more couples I talk to, the more I realize it's not that common that couples push each other and don't get stuck in a routine and don't just, "Oh, it's easy. Oh, it's this." And we were talking about this, and you just said this is resentment. You see that a lot in older couples or in couples that have been together for a long time is you get in this routine and you lose that communication maybe. I don't know, I'm not there, but it seems like you lose that communication, and by the time you're there, it's so far back, the resentment or,
Yeah,
something happened, and that's something Evan and I are always talking about is how can we grow, and that's something we really like, being able to hang out with you and Bryce and be friends like with another couple is that we're both really on the same page in that and always growing and pushing each other and we're learning from each other, I feel like, and being able to support each other in that in different ways. Yeah, we're not in each other's relationships, we're able to talk about different things and we realize we're both always trying to grow. And I think that really comes to surrounding yourself with people that you push you to be a better version of yourself. And I think that's something that's so cool and so unique because so many couples I think get in that day-to-day routine. And yeah, you're gonna get in those routines, but how can you keep growing and keep learning and keep pushing each other so in 20 and 40 whatever how many years you're together that you're still always taking those steps up and always growing as a couple. You don't just get stuck and you're like, oh, it just is what it is, because I don't think it always ever should be just it is what it is.
I realize a lot too that like within the last probably year or so, um, Bryce would always ask me like my opinion on something, and then I'd ask him. He'd be like, "Whatever you want, like it's all good, like whatever. Like I don't have an opinion." And then I'm like, it was getting to a point where it was like he's just like letting me choose everything, and whether it was like what we were eating or what we were doing or where we were traveling, and then it came down to like career choices too, like whatever you're comfortable with. Like I'll go out for this long, or like I'll work for this long, and it's like I kinda was like, "Hold on, this is like I'm getting too much I'm giving too much feedback in this. Like, what is your thoughts? What are you wanting?" And he didn't know what to say. He didn't have any answers. And he's like, I don't know." And I'm like he's like, I want you to be happy." I'm like, "But you're a part of this too. Like, you need to have an opinion because I don't want you to look back and hate me or be mad at me because you were so focused on me and my worries and like my anxieties that you like had to put yours aside, and the next thing you know you're like coming to me saying, "Hey, I really want to do this," and I'm blindsided because you didn't tell
You
me.
didn't communicate it.
Yeah, and it was maybe I never gave you the opportunity to because the environment wasn't, the time for it, but I want to create that environment now so that way we can, because at the end of the day, it's like we're not getting any younger. Time is, time, and we can't slow it down. And I want to make sure that we're optimizing everything we can, whether if it's career, like just a relationship, family, whatever it may be, food. I mean, whatever meal we want. It's just we're doing it together and that we're on the same page. Yeah, it's a give and take. Relationships are definitely never I've said this in the previous podcast, but they say they're 50-50 and I don't agree. It's always about giving and taking, and there's going to be days like Bryce gives 30 and I give 70%, and some days I give maybe 80%, he gives 20%. I don't but I mean, and then there will be times it's 50-50, but it's never always 50-50. And you have to understand that, because if you think that things are going to be a tit for tat, then you're going to get disappointed, because there's going to be times that he needs more of a push than I need a push, and I'm going to need a push more than he needs one, and vice versa. And I think it's cool to see how you and Evan really push each other to do those things, because when you don't push each other to become the best version of yourself, like I was saying, you get complacent, and then where are you at? Are you growing, or are you growing apart? What's happening? And I don't want to know what happens at that point, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that was actually really interesting and something I kind of have a question on that is, 1, do you always think you guys have pushed each other and you've always been growing, or have you gotten to a spot where you have been complacent for a little? And 2, what in the last year pushed you?
Wow. Look at you with the questions. Usually I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, wait, what was question first one?
Have you ever gotten complacent, or have you always pushed each other in a relationship? And 2, you said this last year you have grown a lot and you've been really, like, pushing each other. So what in this last year changed that? So those 2.
Yeah. So I don't think we've always pushed each other. I mean, I think I've lightly pushed him to like pursue what he wants, but then I think there was a point where it really kind of I say this hesitantly because I don't like talking about it, but I think I got really selfish. My anxieties got really out of control, and it was consuming my life to the point where I couldn't live because I was so worried about Bryce being gone all day because he wanted to fly or he wanted to go out driving far, and it would be like far distances, and I'd be like, "You're gonna get in an accident." Like I was really worried about losing him, and it was like crippling me, but also his ability to just live. And so I think that when I look at that, he was always trying to help me be happy, and I was going through a hard time because I didn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, and then I had all the Travelier come, but even then it was still kind of like well, what do you want out of this? And I wasn't sure. And he was always asking me, but then I was like, well, what am I doing to help him? And so I had to really do some reflecting, be like, why is this always about me? Like,
I think that's super interesting though for you to
yeah.
share just really quick and then you can keep going. I just saying like for people to hear that it hasn't always been you've been growing and
Mhm.
how you've changed because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people get stuck and they don't think they can get out of it. So I think
Yeah,
it's
no,
cool
you
to
could
hear you.
always like people say it's too late for me. I'm like, no, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Like no
I think it
matter
gets
what this
harder.
yeah, it does. It does get harder. And
The more
especially
layers.
yeah, because you get older and things change and maybe you can't undo time or whatever it is, and there's not enough time to do whatever it is you're wanting to do. Or but I think that within the last year, I don't know. I think for me, our friendship has really helped. That's like really helped me kind of reevaluate, but also like I was asking you the other day, like if you have any regrets. And I was really thinking about this last like few hours. Like I was like, do I have any regrets? Like I mean, we say like, oh yeah, no, I don't regret anything because I learned a lot from it, which is true. And I mean, I would say that if I wanted to say that right now, I could. But I think that my only regret would be, and that's why I'm trying to change it now, is stop worrying so much and overthinking and freaking out about what could happen rather than focusing on, oh yeah, we get in a car, we could die. I mean, that's inevitable. I mean, duh, you're getting in a car. I mean, that's the risk. But I mean, you there's no guarantee of life, and I think that I was looking at it from the pessimistic side of, oh, well, if I don't leave my house or whatever, I don't have to worry about that. But that's not even true. Like there's things that could still happen. And if you could literally run yourself crazy to the point where you aren't living. And I was realizing like, oh my gosh, my 20s are coming to an end in the next few years, and I don't want to look back and be like, wow, I really could have optimized my time and been so much stronger rather than letting my anxieties control me telling my anxieties to shove it and to not, I mean, not to dismiss them, but to learn how to not let them control me.
100%.
And I think that's really I was getting to the point when I was in therapy that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't live like this. I can't be locked up in my home all day long." And all the travel air, like I was traveling all the time with Bryce, but I wanted to do more things on my own, and that was really hard. And I couldn't find the happy medium of finding the balance of being on my own, but also being with Bryce and enjoying life, but not freaking out. And it was getting out of control. It was getting out of control. And I just like, this is not healthy. And I'm realizing it. And so I wanted to change. And then our friendship came along and you were like, what can you do to help you not be so like, I don't know, worried all the time? It's like,
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear that though.
yeah, yeah. And so like, I mean, what about you? Is there anything that like, do you think you and Evan, I mean, you say you've always kind of pushed each other, but I mean, how are you different from the last year, and what ways more so than not?
Yeah, I definitely think I have grown a lot in the last year, and I think I've been pushed to grow. I think Evan and I have grown a lot as a couple, which has been huge. And I think, if you're in a relationship, being able to grow is huge, just like I said earlier. And I feel like I've probably changed the most in confidence. I feel like I've been confident, but I've definitely over the years grown in that aspect. And I've just become so much happier with who I am and also pretty confident in knowing I'm not perfect, and that's something I feel like I always felt like I had to be perfect, and I realized that I don't. And I think I've just grown in confidence, maturity, just 'cause I'm obviously getting older, but still, like, I'm not just sitting here not working on myself, like, I'm going to therapy, like, I'm doing things to push myself out of my comfort zone. We spent 5 months in Florida without any family or friends, and I had to grow there, and I had to do things that I was uncomfortable with, but I'm getting so much better at doing those things than just staying in my comfort zone and not doing things. And I think that all comes from different things we're doing every day, and our life is not the normal not the normal life. But I probably would say I've just grown as a person so much these last few years, and really having supportive people around me has been probably the biggest part of it. One, when I met Evan, I feel like, which was 4 years ago, not a year ago, but when I met him, I feel like that's really when things started to change. I realized how much more I deserved in relationships and how well he treated me. And then I realized what kind of friends I wanted in my life. And then about a year ago, we met, and that's when I realized there are people out there. Like, I have other friends too, but there's different friendships, and realizing you can meet new friends. And I think I didn't know you could always, like, as you get older, it gets harder to meet friends. And most of my friends are from high school, and those are the friends I knew. And just realizing that there are, not every, oh, another one, I got off topic, but another one was realizing not every single person is meant to be in your life and being able to walk away from those friendships. So I think there's a lot that I've grown in the last year. I think really, though, it's being able to, one, always work on myself, two, admit that I can be wrong and that I need to grow is something that has been huge, and knowing that not everything is going to be perfect, and to roll with it and grow from it and be confident in the things that aren't perfect too.
So it sounds like a lot of these things from hearing me and you talk about this, me and you and I, the grammar, gosh, hearing us talk about this, is that a lot of this stems back to like how our social circles, family and friends can really affect how we are as a person. And I truly do believe that
I totally agree. Can I make a
yes.
quick
No, yeah,
little
please
comment
do.
on it? But I think something you said earlier that I actually wanted to talk about, but I wanted to answer your question, was you were saying that you were getting really worried and, things were really hard and you were overthinking everything. And I was going to say that I think that really comes from surrounding yourself. If you surround yourself with positive people, you're going to be able to get out of that a little more, or, like, grow out of that more.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're around people that are negative and that are like, oh, you're right,
Yeah.
like, that can happen.
Yeah.
And yesterday we were in the car and I was like, yeah, Haley, those can happen, but I don't wanna live in fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I've caught myself going down those rabbit
Yeah.
holes, but I know I wanna be happy, I wanna do these things, and I think just surrounding yourself with people that are, whoever that might be, if you're having a hard time with friends, if you're listening to this, if you're having a hard time in a relationship with yourself, surrounding yourself with the people that you look at and you say, "Wow, they're gonna push me to be better." Whatever that might be, if it's Bryce, if it's, I'm not saying it's just me, we literally had that conversation yesterday in the car where I was like, "Oh, that's interesting because you just said, you can get caught in those rabbit holes." And I think that's really interesting because I think if you are around negative people, easily you can keep going down that. And I feel like I think that was interesting just because if you're listening to this, I think it'd be hard to get out of that sometimes.
Oh, it totally is. And I think that the difference is, I mean, not necessarily just finding someone, whether if it's someone like close, family, friend, relationship, whatever it is, that the difference that you said is you acknowledge the fear that, yeah, that's scary. You acknowledge that, which is a huge, I mean, communication skill is acknowledging and validating someone's fear,
Yeah,
worry.
not just being like, "What are you doing?
Yeah,
What
be
are you
like, that's
thinking?"
not it's not even that scary. Like,
Yeah,
what are the odds of that happening? Like,
yeah,
the reality of that happening though, you have 1 in a million getting struck by
yeah,
lightning. Like that, those statistics don't work for me, and it just like it actually just makes me mad, and I just shut down. But like you were like, I yeah, that is scary. And you're like, I want to live a happy life though. I want to continue striving for my life. And then you go and you show almost like a plan of action. Like you're like, I am still going to try and do this. I can't surround myself. And that's the difference I think with a lot of people is that most people don't, they'll just validate your feelings and then they'll move on. They'll say, yeah, that is scary. And like I had a therapist I was like, I'm terrified for leaving my house. I'm terrified of living life. And then he would say, you're right. Life is scary. I mean, did you hear about this story? And I was like, in that exact moment, I stopped going to this therapist because I was like,
it's not helping.
you're just wanting me to pay for your car payment or something right now. Like you're just like you're wanting you're just validating my fears, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here
Yeah.
to change and to how. Okay, so yeah, I'm scared. How can I do better? How can I not be like that? And that's really significant because at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I can let these things like freak me out, and I might not. And I think that was partially it. Like part of the reason, I mean, our last podcast, we said society from pressure is why I had a hard time with the idea of having kids for a long time was I was terrified. I mean, that it's scary. It still is scary. But you said like you'll take it as it comes, you know? If you I was telling Bryce like Olive got an MRI and then was dealing with lots of issues from that, and she was dehydrated because she had diarrhea, and I was like, I should have known this. Like this is why I don't want to have kids, because I should have known this is something I should have known. I should have seen coming. I could have prevented it. And Bryce is like, Haley, you could have prevented it, yes, but you're not going to know or understand all of this. And now you know. Yeah. Now you know when she has severe poopies, like she needs to drink more water. And I was like, yes, but I should have known this. Like, I feel bad. This is my fault. He's like, you can't do that. You can't take this burden on you like that, because if you do, you're never going to enjoy life, and you're just going to be stuck trying to research every aspect you can, and you're never going to be able to. And I was like, and that's the thing, like I always try to prevent. I'm like, okay, what can I prevent from this situation happening? And then I'm like, crap, I should have known that, and I just beat myself up. And it's like, no, like, okay, how can I learn from that, turning it into a situation of action rather than dwelling on it and basking in that moment, than letting it consume you. And I think that's the switch I've been trying to make when it coming full circle in the conversation of regrets of not letting myself get into that rabbit hole of despair and, oh, this is never going to happen. I should never have kids, or I should never, I need to be able to let myself feel the emotion, but then what can I do now? And that's something that you are really good at, I've noticed. And you're like, okay, yeah, it's scary, but I still have like goals and dreams. And if I let myself consume these thoughts or whatever in these moments and let the world scare the crap out of me, it'll never happen. I mean, no wonder people get so scared, because I wonder who is the person that's helping them feel that way and making them feel like a better person. And I don't think that, not to say that Bryce and I've never done that for each other, like validate each other's feelings. And
But
then like
it's
it's so
different. It's
different.
like like we were talking about, it's like you're in a relationship for a long time, but sometimes you need somebody or something to come into your life to kind of get those conversations even started again in your relationship and recognize those
Yeah, yeah.
things, because you don't know, you get into the day to day and you kind of don't realize
Yeah.
that's the thing. You're like, oh, it's normal. And then you start hanging out with maybe other people, or you see a different couple and you're like, oh, let me think about that.
Yeah. And something you did, and like if Bryce ever did this, what I'm about to tell you, like this would not have gone the same way. I'll tell you that right now. And Bryce even said, like, if I did that, I would not have gotten away with that. I mean, Olive was really hot, and we wanted her to cool down. And Bryce was like, "Why don't you just put her on the ground?" And then I was like, "No, she'll get dirty." And then you looked at me, and you're like, "Haley, she's a dog," and I'm like, if anyone else had looked at me and told me my dog was a dog, it sounds so silly. I would have like probably gotten really mad at them and been like, "You don't understand. Like, I don't want her getting dirty." And you were like, "She's a dog. Like, she needs to cool down." Like, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And I was like, really hard, but I was like, and then she cooled down. I was like, "Gosh, dang, they were right." And Bryce, I know, like told you, like if anyone else could did that, like they would not have gone well. But like it's a new environment. It's a different person. Like Bryce, and it also made me realize, like, why am I not responsive to Bryce challenging me to do that stuff? Why do I have that wall up? Because maybe we have been together for so long, and it's like, what? No, what are you talking about? Like, no, this is what I want to do, and we get comfortable being where we are, and that's where I think the lack of growth can come in. And I think that it was really cool to be able to see you be comfortable enough to challenge me to do that, because I don't know if that necessarily was something that you maybe felt comfortable.
Oh, no, I definitely was like, I know this is gonna push my limit. I was sitting there, I was like, how do I say this nicely? But I feel like this is something you can grow from. And then
Yeah.
and then you walked away. 'Cause I remember looking at Bryce and we were talking about it too. And he was like, no, no, she took that well. And I literally said, I was like, you don't have to, but here's an option kind of thing. And I think we do that a lot where it's like, we're able to communicate in any circumstance. We're talking and I'm like, we're talking about something and I'm like, "Hey, this is my view on it." I feel like we did it something recently too, and I was like, "Hey, just here's another perspective on it, but you don't have to
Yeah.
take it."
Yeah.
And I think just delivering it in a way, not like, "Oh my god, why would you not put your dog on the
Yeah,
ground?" Like, it's a dog.
like a
But it was just like,
judgmental way. And that's
yeah,
the
and
difference between finding the right
I think
people.
that's it too, is like we're really big on not judging each other and pushing each other to grow. And I think that's something huge in like both of our relationships and then our friendship and then our friendship as couples too, is one, we are not judging each other ever. We're very like, no, we totally respect that. Do you like that though? And we'll challenge each other and we'll ask each other how we can, maybe change something, but we're not judging. And that's where you start to feel comfortable in really showing those things you struggle with, that then you are able to grow through those struggles. So I think a lot of things, and something we actually wrote down like when we were talking about this podcast, was admitting you are wrong. And we've talked about that a little in here, but I think a lot of people have a problem with admitting they're wrong or not, and then not pushing themselves. And I think being able to say, like you said earlier and we talked about, was, yeah, I was like this. Okay, how can I change? And I think those are huge things that help you grow, is being able to admit, being able to ask for help, being able to work through different emotions and learn from them
rather than just like be complacent with it or like accept that, oh yeah, I was wrong, but I'm never going to admit that, because that doesn't allow for growth.
yeah.
A moment that also was really interesting to me was when I realized, like, wow, why did I do that? It reflected more on me, I think, than it would on you, obviously. But you were talking to me about your Aura ring. And you're like, that's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure. I was like, wait, that sounds weird. Your Aura ring. And you're like, it's really cool. I really want to like do like a little story on it or something and like share people about it. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then you're like, yeah, maybe I'll even pitch them. And I was like, good luck. Ha. Like, I wasn't mean, but I was like, ha, good luck. Like, that's a big company. But I was like, wait a minute. What the heck was that kind of response? Like, I was like, that was the most unsupportive response I've ever done in my life for her. Like, that was not okay. And I literally, like, I remember calling you and being like, I am so sorry. Like, that was not okay. Like, that was not like me. That is not supportive. And like, if anyone could do it, it would be you. Like, you are like such a go-getter. And like, whether you end up working with them or not, like, I didn't like how that was my initial response. It should have been like, yeah, you do that. Like, I want to be that person who uplifts you and like pushes you to be better and go for those big companies, because someone's got to do it. And I think that of all people, you could. And I definitely think that I never want to be that person that's like, oh yeah, good luck. Like, I'm not that person and I never want to be. And I think that I recognized that in the moment. I was like, oh, I felt awful and just gross and dirty and just like, I just don't like that. I was like, I want to take a shower. No, I'm like, ugh, I felt so bad.
But I think also, talking about that is, it's so common for people, and I don't think you were trying to do this, but it's very common for people to drag people down.
Yes.
And I think whatever in that moment, maybe in your head you thought, I don't know what you thought. I actually didn't take it that way at all, but I'm just going to use this as an example. Is like, you could easily be like, oh, you can't do that, because it's easier, I think, sometimes for people to drag other people down, because people have a really hard time being happy for people. And that's something in our friendship we actually don't. So like, I know you weren't saying that, and we're really good at supporting each other, and that's why we work so well together, because it's not a competition. It's how can we uplift each other? But people have such a hard time, and I think that's where you probably were like, "Oh, that came off so wrong," and I actually didn't take it that way at all.
Thank
But
goodness.
for the what?
Thank goodness.
But for the most part, people aren't trying to uplift other people, especially in the same world where you're doing similar things and you're striving for maybe similar goals, even though they're going to be different.
Yeah, well, and like even in those moments, I don't even think always people realize how that does come across. Even if they like say they're a supportive friend, but then make those comments of like, "Oh yeah, good luck, whatever." Like, "Oh yeah, good luck. I tried that. That's not going to work," or that's really hard. Like, it's just those like negative like intentions, and whether you realize that or not, that is not supportive. A supportive person can be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so challenging, but you could do it," or "How can I help you?" or "What, that's amazing. Like, let me know how that goes." Like, it's a huge perspective change and a mindset change, and it is not easy, especially when you are so used to being that person that's always like, "Good luck," or "Yeah, I tried that," whatever. I think that a lot of people just don't understand how that can come across, and when you are surrounded by people who are doing that with you, it rubs off on you, like I was saying earlier. And
Misery loves misery too.
it does. Misery loves company. It's a
Oh yeah,
huge
misery
thing.
loves company. Yeah, I said it wrong.
No, but that's it too. Misery loves misery. um, and so it's just kind of interesting to me because I never. It's just the difference is that I've been surrounded by people who are always kind of like that. Like, they're like, "Oh, good luck," or "Haha," or like you see on social media, like this person's like insane, like that could never happen. And it's like, well, that's how people accomplish amazing things, is that they challenge people like that. They put it to the test and they push themselves. Like, you don't, if everyone was like, "Oh, haha, good luck," you would never see those amazing accomplishments people do. And I don't even mean like amazing, like you have to have like, building a computer or whatever like that. Like it could be literally small, something small, like, pitching a brand or, running a mile. I don't know.
You see that though a lot. Like people have a hard time being happy for other people. Like you even see that in like a really healthy relationship where other people might get jealous of it and that becomes the, oh, they're just like that because they're jealous. But it's like be happy, like
Yeah, yeah.
why aren't you happy for them? Is it because you're not happy? But then if you're noticing yourself, and I don't think, if you are doing that or you are putting people down, in those moments, like listening to this podcast is stepping back and being like, am I doing that? Why am I doing that? And how can I work on myself? And I think a lot of it can also come from comparing. And people compare. And the second you start comparing, you start feeling down. And then you aren't able to be supportive for other people because you're so frustrated or you're so angry. And I think that's where it's like, I've had to work on myself in hard situations and, different things and being like, I didn't like that reaction. Just like you said, you didn't like how you handled something or you said a phrase. It's stepping back and you're like, I'm not going to do that again. And why did I do that? And I think there's just different reasons for people, reacting or lashing out in a certain situation. And I think a lot of it comes from just not being confident and comparing to other people and how take those moments and learn from them and step back and look at how you can continue to work on yourself to be happy for other people because honestly, everyone's going to live their life in different ways and let them do that and focus on yourself.
It's really important, and it's not easy finding authenticity in people who are genuinely willing to work on themselves, like we talk about. And I've always, I guess I can't say always, I really love the feeling I get when I'm with you because you do challenge me in the ways that do make me cringe. And that's the thing is that I'm really gonna put myself on the spot here, dear Neptune. Oh, bear with me. I can't believe I'm doing this. And you can be honest. I want you to be, okay? How can I as a friend be better for you?
I feel like you are a really good friend.
I know,
feel
but
like
there's
you're
always
very
room for
supportive.
improvement.
And I feel like actually before I answer that, something you did recently that was huge and really, really stood out to me was when Evan left to go on a 2-week trip. And it might not sound like that long, but distance isn't easy always.
No.
Was the second I drove away from the airport, you called me and I literally just started crying because I was like, wow, somebody's asking how I'm doing. And, I've had other people ask too, but it was really nice to have a friend call and actually genuinely be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And for me to be open about that's actually, like, also scary because I'm usually very much like, "No, I'm good, I'm good." But it was so nice to have somebody that don't forget to do those things as a friend because those little things really add up. And I actually remember in that moment being like, "Wow, I can do that more when you're going through something." And then you went through something a couple of days later, and I was like, "I'm gonna call you."
Yeah, literally
And
you
then
did,
you
and then I started
So
crying.
you can learn from each other and you can push each other to do those things by learning. And I like Evan even texted you moments later, I think, and was like, "Thank you for doing that. That meant a lot." Because yes, as a couple, we talk about it and we go through it, but to have somebody that's like not just, "Oh, you're fine. It's only 2 weeks." Because the amount of times I've heard,
Or
"Oh,
I've
you're
had it
fine."
longer. I did a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, like but it's like, okay, but this is what we're dealing with right now. So that was really nice. But as a friend, how can you become I'm itching my head like, let me think about this. Okay. Okay, wait. Okay, so we sat here for like 30 seconds. I'm definitely gonna chop that out if you're listening to this. But I can't really think of something, so Haley's helped me out here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe we
I
can
I
go
have something
bounce
I really
ideas
wanna
off
work on
of.
with
Okay.
you is that, um, not only just, like, I think asking more about, like, when you ask me, like, how you're doing or something like that, or how do I word this? When I'm talking to you about you, not just, like, listening and being that person, but also making sure that, like, I'm asking questions that are not just, "How are you doing?" Like, I don't know, maybe something that's a little bit more deep than that or something like because it's really easy, I think, when you ask someone how you're doing, like, to, like when even when you genuinely ask, like, "How are you doing?" Like, I'm not good," or "I'm good." It's easy to kind of get the, like, surface answer, but, like, making sure at the root you are okay, and, like, if there is something that's actually, like, wrong but then this was the main thing I was actually going to say, is I have been honest with you 100%, but I think that in the heat of a moment, like, when something is, like, off with me, I don't always be
That's a good one.
blunt with you
We were
about
just
it.
talking
Like,
about this.
yeah, like, yesterday, I
So I
was
did come up with this one, I just couldn't remember because I said this to her
Yeah,
before
you
the
did. Yeah, you
podcast.
did. You did actually. Um, you were asking me we were talking about getting, like, coffee or something, and I went to La La Land, and you met us there, and you're like, "I thought you didn't like it," and I was like, "No, no, I really did," and then And then you're like, well, you're like, I didn't really drink my drink yesterday when we went there. And the reason was because I was kind of car sick and I just was a little dizzy, but I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't want you to worry or think like anything of it. It wasn't a big deal. And you're like, well, why didn't you just say that? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to make it a big deal. And just having those raw, honest moments,
Being
the
honest
small
in the
things
moments,
though.
yeah.
And you already know most of the time, but like, you're like, you can just tell me that. I'm not going to get mad at you or judge you. And I think that for me, I think honestly,
Or you're
those,
so used to being judged.
yeah, and people often just be like, "Oh, you're fine. Here, just suck on a sucker. You know, you're nauseous, whatever. Like, it's fine." And like, usually, I'll just take care of it. But like, those things like make sense for later on because you're like, "Wait, why are you going to this place? I thought you didn't like it." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I do." And then like we were taking pictures there. That was fun, aesthetic. But like, it was just like it makes sense. And that at the end of the day, like those little moments in a friendship can make a lot. Like it helps people understand a moment rather than just being like, "Oh, whatever,
Yeah,
okay."
definitely trying to cover it up, and I feel like that's when we were actually talking about that was a good one, because right before we were kinda talking about it, and I was like, something will come up and you'll say, "No, no, no," and then a few minutes later, like, I was like, now you're to a point where you'll say, "No, no, no,"
Yeah,
but
I'm like,
then
"No, that's not true." But no, oh wait, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you're right. But it takes time, and it takes time because you've been so used to being judged. So I think that was a super interesting one. But I think just if you're listening to this in friendships or relationships, it's putting in that time because I think people think friendships and relationships can come easy. And don't get me wrong, there are easy parts to it, but you always need to be working on your relationship. And I think working on yourself and relationship because you can't work on your relationship or any kind of relationship. It can be with your parents, it can be with your friends, it can be with anyone if you're not working on yourself and you're not willing to admit you have flaws too. And just like you said, like I did this and I've learned so much recently about being a friend in ways too. Like I had really bad allergies and you were like, "Hey, how are you doing?" the next day. And I was like, "Good." And you're like, "No, no, no. How are you actually doing?" But not most people don't re-question or push because you know how I actually am and probably how I was acting. Versus I don't really like to complain and I'm like, I'm fine. It's really not that big a deal. But to take those moments and I'm growing too as a friend because I'm learning what I really like coming from you and how you really put in the time to really know how I'm doing versus scratching the surface on things.
Yeah, no, and that's literally it. I was just thinking, like I was thinking this morning, I was like, I want to ask Bailey, like, what can I do to be better, like as a friend, or how can I support you more? And like, it sounds funny, but like you and Evan have such a great relationship, but I want that with me and you. But I in a different way. I want to have that deep relationship with you where we have fun. We do like I've never felt so good about where I am in my life and where I'm headed. And I love that you're in it with me. Are you gonna cry again? Dang it.
I really think in the last like I literally was texting Evan right before we got on this podcast and I was like, she has been growing so much. And I don't know how much we can talk about on this podcast, so I'll keep it vague. But I was like, it's so cool to see. I really feel like she's becoming a different person from just the person I knew a year ago and how you talk about yourself multiple years ago. I'm like, you were like yesterday we were at Disneyland. This podcast recorded earlier. So if you hear this, we were not at Disneyland yesterday. But we were yesterday at Disneyland, you were like so confident. And I feel like I hadn't really seen that side of you. I've seen that side of you in certain ways, but not in that way. And then you were even able to sit there and conversate with me about it when we were in lines and being like, I was not like this. And you were able to admit, like, no, 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 this isn't how I always am, but this is how I want to be. And I think that was huge. And I loved that. And it wasn't like I didn't if it was just like you were confident, I would have been like, that's cool. But I really like that you were like, this is not how I always have been, and this is what I want to do to work on it. And I think it's been so cool to be able to be that person that's pushed you to do that because you've pushed me in different ways too. And I think it's cool when you're in a friendship that challenges you
Yeah.
and you've been very, very honest with like, yeah, I've done this and I didn't like that, but you've pushed me because I've seen how it is. And I think that's really unique.
Hmm. I think it's cool too because when we look at the dynamics of relationships and just all of these things together and how they function as a whole, there are a lot of moving parts to it. And I think, like, I was thinking, someone asked us a while ago in one of our previous episodes, like, well, what if one person isn't willing to work on themselves? Like, how are we supposed to make that relationship work? And I like, for example, not saying this is true at all because it's definitely not, but like, if Bryce wasn't willing to work on himself while I was, I'm growing as a person, but when one person remains stagnant or is not necessarily working on themselves, that can be really hard. And I'm like thinking about like what advice could we give someone who's in those situations, whether if it's in a friendship who's not willing to do that and not willing to change, not willing to work on themselves, like and not willing to grow. Like how like if I wasn't doing that, what would you tell me? Like would that I think that it just wouldn't flourish as much, but you want to make it work.
It definitely wouldn't, and I think that's a huge part of it is both sides, but I think something you can do to start and, there's gonna be baby steps, and if the person doesn't wanna change, like, that's gonna be a different conversation, obviously, but it takes time, and I think leading by example it says is that the saying,
Yeah, leading by
leading by
example.
example is doing the things that you would want somebody to do for you is huge, and I think you learn from that a lot, and you will slowly start to realize that those people pick up on those things, and I think, yeah, that takes time, but I really think it's be the person that you would want them to be too. And I think it can be really hard when someone doesn't wanna work on themselves, but people grow, people change, and if you're surrounded by that, it's gonna help a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. And I think too, like we talk about how as one person changes, your social circle, your inner circle, they change. And that doesn't mean they'll always be there. And that can be really hard because sometimes I try to force things that, I can't expect on other people. And that's because they're not in that place yet. Like if this was like I think about how different the dynamics would be with me and you if we had met 5 years ago. It would not be anything like this. I was so immature. Holy crap. Like and I just like I feel this like change within me, but only you can do that. And especially in like relationships like marriages and ones that are authentic, like you guys love each other and it's going good, but like it doesn't have to be like this hot, steamy romance. Like it doesn't have to be like that. It could be literally just like Bryce and I have been married for a very long time, or you and I have been dating for a very long time, and you guys are always pushing each other. But sometimes things can get, it's like okay, well, what now? And like most people are like, oh, maybe we'll have a baby. Like they'll throw in another dynamic or something like that to spice it up, and that works for them. But I think in those situations, when you look at it, you can be so influential on someone in a relationship or a friendship even. Um, I never in a million years would ever think I'd be in this situation right now with you as a friend. And it's really cool. Like I just feel like in my core, like this burning like passion to be a better person. And and really I really want to take that and put it into my relationship with Bryce and I. And even with my family and just people around me. And I want to be confident and it's actually helping those anxieties that I have. And it's cool because not everything in life will come easy, never does. And like at the end of the day, like stuff is still really hard. But when you look at the big picture here and you think about how the dynamics of when you're trying to constantly work on yourself and it's not like necessarily self-care like going to a spa or like doing a face mask like we see a lot of that. It's taking that time to reflect on what it is within you that is holding you back. And I feel like everyone has something.
Definitely, and not leaning on those things that are hard as a crutch, like anxiety. It can be like, "Oh, I just have anxiety, I can't do that."
Yeah, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I know it can be
Yeah. Oh,
take
absolutely.
over who you are, but I think it's, "Okay, I have this, and it does take maybe it takes you over, whatever, but how can I change that? Can I go to therapy? Do I have somebody in my life that can help push me? How can we start working out?" Like, working out, like, those are little things, but, like, little things, like, if I'm working out a lot, I don't have as much anxiety, and that's me. That's what works for me. That's not gonna work for everyone. And I think it's always working on yourself. Like you said, like, it's so cool from our friendship that you're able to now go into a relationship, and I feel like how we talk and things we talk about, we're always talking, like, very deep, I feel like, is you are changing so much in just your relationship because of our friendship, but if you weren't wanting to work on yourself, you wouldn't take anything from our friendship and put it into your relationship. So it's being ready for you. Like you said, if this was 5 years ago, I probably would just it wouldn't be the same. And timing is everything, and I think we met at the perfect time because I was in a spot too where I was ready to let somebody in. And and that is not easy for me. I do not let a lot of people in just because of things that have happened in the past, and I know when I'm all in with a friendship, I'm all in, and I put a lot into my friendships and my relationships and just all of that, and I think it's really just working on yourself, being confident in who you are. Like, I'm always working on being more confident in who I am, and I think if you can take the time to do that, and it doesn't have to take all day. It's not like you don't have time to do that. You always have time to do that. It's literally just in your day-to-day interactions, who you're interacting with. Walk away from it and say, "What did I grow from that? What did I learn from that? And are they benefiting me or are they dragging me down? What what can I do differently to change my life?"
I think that was very well put, and It really nailed it on the head, and I was thinking about how there was we when you were talking about that, you made me think of a question I wanna ask you as we start to kinda wrap these up. There are It's really hard to constantly be changing as a person. It's not an easy situation, especially if you're in a relationship where maybe it's hard to let that other person challenge you. Like, I really think I don't let Bryce push me in the ways that he could, and not to say that I don't want him to.
I don't think that's a weird thing, though. I think that's very common.
Yeah, like, and I mean, like, if like I said earlier, like, if he had said, "Why don't you just lay all on
Yeah.
the floor?" I would not have been as receptive to that.
But I think that's what's so cool, and, like, I like that we're talking about this because you're noticing that, you're not just continuing with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and I think that I'm, like, wondering, like, what advice could we give to someone, or even myself, in those situations where they're not as receptive to someone. And I really hope that people don't look at it like, oh, I'm gonna take advantage of this person, and like, oh yeah, well, you can put your dog on the floor. Like, obviously it's gotta be a healthy push. Like, you have to, okay, I understand that this is hard for you, but look at the circumstances. They're like, we'll use all putting olive on the ground. It was cement. I mean, there wasn't even dirt. I mean, like, let's start baby steps. I was worried about her getting dirty, and then I was worried about her maybe eating stuff on the floor. There was nothing around for her to really eat. And okay, worst case scenario, she eats something. Like, what would it be? I mean, there really wasn't anything. And then the ground was cool. So what are the benefits out of this? Like, it was really something. And I want to be able to be more receptive to being able to push myself, because we're not always going to be together. And that's the thing. Like, that's the part that I really think, that if someone's pushing you to grow, but you're not with them, how can you utilize that and in your relationships for someone else when they're not necessarily always, you're not being as receptive to letting them push you? And that's how I want to look at this situation, is what can we tell someone when they're not around someone that does push them all the time, to grow.
I think it's really reflecting in those moments and looking at things. I mean, like, is this a habit? Is this because I'm comfortable? And I think it's almost sitting there. And like you said, maybe if you need to walk through every little thing, like I know you walked through it and you went through all those things, to walk through it and then try it. If you don't like it, that's fine. And I think the biggest thing is you don't have to like everything you try. And I think pushing yourself out of your comfort zone when you're alone. I was alone for 5 months. I mean, yes, sorry, I was with Evan. I wasn't alone, but I was alone when he was out kiting and when he was doing things, and I was doing things more on my own. And there wasn't really anyone there saying, you should go do this. Yeah, Evan was supporting me, he would kinda give me a push, but at the end of the day, it's what I'm deciding, and I have to push myself. Nobody can do that. So I can say all these things to you, but I think it's really being ready to take that next step to push yourself into those scary situations, because Evan and you know, I'm gonna use you 2 as an example of my parents, but you guys sit there and can push me, but if I'm not ready to receive that, I'm gonna just stay in my comfort zone and I'm not gonna push myself. So I think really it's reflecting on yourself
Yeah.
and being okay with everything not being perfect and being ready to take those steps and be in those uncomfortable positions and know it's gonna be uncomfortable. And after, you don't have to do it again if you don't like it. And maybe the first time you're not gonna like it, maybe 5 times then you're gonna like it. But I think
I
it's
definitely
really
did not like putting all the ground the first time, but I saw it actually was beneficial, so and I
yeah.
did it again.
Exactly, and it's just, trying different things and seeing what works for you, but I think it's really within you. I think it's diving deep into who you are and what you wanna be and pushing yourself into those uncomfortable situations. What do you think?
I I think that, yeah, you said it perfectly. And to kind of go into you asking that question, so we want to ask you guys. We're just gonna start doing a thing called, "How do you want to unleash yourself?" We're gonna want to reflect back on this episode and what is something that you can do that will push yourself to grow, or how can you become a better version of yourself, in what aspect. And so I want to ask, I think, you that question: how can you challenge yourself, or what are you working on to be able to grow better as a person and to keep evolving into the best Bailey you can be?
That's a good question. I think something that I've really been doing lately, and I think actually Evan was the one that really pointed this out to me, was I go to therapy, and I think something that is therapy is known as this place you go to when you have problems. And Evan, from the very beginning, was like, "No, make therapy a place you go, even when there's no problems." And I still to this day, like, I'm like, "I'm in such a good spot, I don't need to go," but I continue to go instead of once every week, I go once a month or once every 2 months, but I think it's that's something I really want to continue, is going and pushing myself to talk to somebody and continue to grow by going to therapy, even when I'm not in a hard situation. And then to step back in all my like all in different relationships and continue to see, how can I be a better friend for that person? How can I be a better girlfriend? How can I be a better daughter? And just in all those situations, and continue to always look at how I can be better and admit, okay, I did that wrong. What can I do to get better? And how can I be there better for somebody else? I think really it's just taking the time to always grow in different situations and take each thing as a lesson. And yeah, you're not going to do it every single little thing during the day, but there are moments you're going to want to step back and really grow from those. So I think, I'm always growing and always working on myself. I'm pushing myself into different uncomfortable things. So if you're scared to do something, try it. Like podcasting, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I'd have been freaked out because I wanted to be perfect and I wouldn't have wanted to say things that were hard, because I know people work off insecurities. And honestly, somebody can say something about me and I really don't care, because I know what kind of person I am and I'm proud of the person I am. So I think it's knowing what you want. And I think knowing who you are is huge, because you can be confident in those moments that somebody isn't nice. And then you can be vulnerable and you can continue to work on yourself the more that you are confident in who you are and you're okay with it. You don't need to be perfect, because nobody is perfect.
I love that. Constantly reflecting and being able to ask yourself, how can I be a better person to this person? When you are serving other people, you end up serving yourself at the end of the day.
And don't spread yourself thin. I just want to say that.
Yes.
Make sure you're putting the energy into the
Yeah,
people
there's boundaries.
yeah, I have huge boundaries. I think that's important to say, because I don't want you to feel like you always need to be the person working on it. Make sure the people you're working on yourself so you can be there, but do not put yourself out there for people that don't deserve that. Be
Yes.
nice,
Yes.
but put those boundaries up, because that has been huge for me to be able to be here and to be able to continue to grow, because I'm not trying to make everybody else happy. I'm making myself happy by being a good person, but also doing where my boundaries are.
That's brilliant. I think that it's really important to be able to know your limits, know the capacities, know what's a healthy amount of, helping other people while helping yourself. And I think, like, for me, how can I, I guess, unleash myself? I would say that just not freaking out about over every little thing, and stop focusing on what could happen. And I mean, or switching the question I ask, rather than thinking, oh, well, what if I get in an accident? Well, we'll think about, well, what happens when I get to the destination? Rather than thinking about changing the question I ask myself, turning that perspective, and making sure at the end of the day, I'm trying to optimize my life to the fullest I can, while supporting Bryce, while supporting you, while supporting my friends and family, all of that. And making sure that I'm not losing out on a life that is so great for me to live, and I have so much potential, and not getting lost about what's really the bigger picture here. Because at the end of the day, you can find a million things to worry about, but I believe that everyone is destined for greatness, and figuring out what your greatness is not easy, but it's a part of the journey. And I'm really excited to be able to continue working on myself, because it's never going to end. It never will be. I mean, the fact that I'm able to be so honest about this stuff is really weird. I'm having like an out of body experience with it.
Yeah, no, it definitely is weird, and
Yeah.
super nice to be able to talk about this and push each other to be more open,
Yeah.
so that,
But it feels
somebody's
right.
listening to this,
Yeah.
they're able to also grow from it, because I remember searching for so many different podcasts when I was, going through moments when I needed to grow or I needed to do this or that and not being able to find it. And I just love being able to sit down and have all these conversations.
And Tony Robbins is really good too.
Oh yeah,
I
love Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins is the
He's
best.
great.
Anyway, awesome. Well, be sure to let us know how you can unleash yourself. Go journal it, type it, let us message us, and let us know how it is. Follow us on Instagram, and we'll let you know when we're going live, so you can join us and we can discuss this more. It seems to be a pretty hot topic. I really think it's a good one. Maybe we should do a part 2 on this sometime. I think
yes, that would be so much fun. Thank you so much for listening.